There comes a time when a choice defines a person. Happiness, sorrow, joy, and grief are all connected to a pivotal moment. When faced with tough decisions, people need to see those who have gone before them, who have been brave enough to preserve life.
What would you say your message is to mothers who are considering having an abortion?
I would say I understand that you're really confused and you feel like there are no other options, but there are. And the child you carry inside is a real person, not just a blob of tissue.
All the reasons that they were using as rationale or to justify the death of my sister should be every reason that we should be doing everything we can to care for these people.
We were ready for the suggestion of abortion. And I remember her saying, kind of going in that direction. She wasn't saying abortion, she wasn't, saying anything to that effect, but she was headed in that direction. And I remember saying, that's not an option. And she said, even if this child is profoundly retarded, and I cut her off, I said, it's not an option, move on.
I knew what had happened there. I knew that a part of me was taken away and that my child was gone forever.
So what would you say to people who would advise women to have abortions?
That's wrong. I mean, even though the child may have a disability, they still have a soul, they still have a brain, they still have feelings.
After my cancer was confirmed, I learned I was pregnant. And I just knew, because I prayed. I said, God, give me the strength to tell the truth. And that truth would be when I was about 20 years old. I walked into an abortion facility and I had an abortion.
If you had a family history of breast cancer and you had an abortion 18 or less, every single woman in that study with that situation got breast cancer by the age of 45.
Keith and Jennifer Hanselman are the parents of big brother Connor and now sextuplets, Sophia, Lucy, Isabella, Alex, Logan, and Kyle. Now when you consider with everything that you've been through and you go back to that day when you were broached with the option of selective reduction or abortion of some of the babies, what goes through your mind now?
It scares me to think that we even pause to think about it, because I can't even imagine what life would be like without one of the kids. I can't even imagine who we would have chosen to get rid of, it still really bothers me to think that we could have lost some of them. We could have listened to what he said, we could have listened to the doctor and made a choice to get rid of some of these kids, and I can't even imagine who we would live without now.
The most vulnerable person today, in not just America, but the world, are unborn children who are now the victims of violence against their person simply because of their condition of dependency and their immaturity.
While some physicians are fighting to save the lives of babies born prematurely, others make a living out of killing ones the same age while still in the womb, even in the third trimester. Many are past the point of viability, so well developed they could survive life outside the womb. Tony Levatino, a former abortionist, says he has no regrets about leaving the profession.
My partner and I were doing second trimester D&E abortions. A D&E second trimester abortion is literally tearing a baby to pieces. One of the instruments that you use during that procedure is called a Sofer clamp. Basically, it's a clamp that's used to literally dismember or rip these babies apart. And I remember putting that clamp inside the uterus and pulling like you always have to be able to get pieces out, and out came an arm or a leg, and I remember just staring at it in the clamp. And I just froze for a second. I mean, this just absolutely made me sick. Looking down at this pile of goo on the table that used to be somebody's son or daughter.
What did it take to get you to where you are today?
For me, it was my faith and the support of my family
just continuing to pray, just constantly praying. That's all I could do at that time when you're feeling so desperate and hopeless.
And the hopeless days gave way to hope?
Absolutely, yes, to hope.
I just remember there were certain decisions that had to be made that were seemingly big decisions. Rachel was still in the hospital recovering from, obviously, surgery. Faith was across the city in another hospital, so I was having to go from one to the other. And in the process, because certain decisions had to be made rather immediately, it was intimidating at 25 to be in a room with no one and then have a doctor and the doctor's assistant and the whole residential staff come in there and talk about decisions that had to be made regarding Faith's life. It was a little overwhelming. I just remember going home, and I was home alone. I can specifically remember the side of the bed and the prayer. I just let it all out and said, God, I don't know what you've got planned here, but let her live, and we'll help her, and whatever she needs, we'll get it done.
What have you learned from your daughter? Have there things, life lessons, other things that you've learned from her?
For me, it's been patience and trust in God. He knows what he's doing. Even though you don't know the plan and you may want to know the plan, it's going to work out.
If somebody was facing hurdles similar to what you faced in life, what advice would you give them?
Just never give up. Suicide should never be an option for no one. Just make every day count. If you're down and out, find something to cheer you up. Read a book, something.
There's always something you can look to.
There's always something you can look to, like a shoulder you can lean on.
Today we're talking to people about the topic of abstinence until marriage. We're finding out if this lifestyle can benefit society on a large scale. Abstinence is a term that's thrown about quite a bit these days. Tell me how you define abstinence.
I'm not even sure I like that word a lot of times. Abstinence to me is very little to do with sex. And it's much more to do with a student learning about each other. I don't know why it's controversial to some people to talk about why 15-year-olds might want to keep their pants on and to maybe respect themselves, or for a guy to want to talk to a girl and not just mess around physically or have sex with her. So really, when we're talking about abstinence, we're not talking about not doing something. We're talking about understanding the opposite sex, understanding relationships, and really understanding how you interact. And sexuality is one part of that. So let's understand it in its whole context and stop just defining it as not having sex, because there's a lot more to it than that. That's never made sense to me. So we're really talking about the whole person and their interaction with other people.
It is our passion to highlight those who have had to make tough decisions. As they share their stories, others will be inspired to face life head on.